Welcome to Jekyll Geek's RPG Realm. I'm Jekyll Geek, and this is my RPG Realm. I do plan to create a full and more in-depth review of the entire RPG of the Land of Eem. I've thought that there's something very important I want to tell everyone about this system. Well, at least all those that listen to this video, which is, I guess, all the people I can reach. But a video specifically about the exploration mechanics of the RPG called the Land of Eem. Explaining my history in short with RPGs, and that is a long one, I have started with second edition and moved through the various editions, playing each of them for quite some time, yes, including fifth edition. And I'm sort of the school that never really got into much into overland travel or hex mapping will play, and like many players of newer editions, I struggled with having overland travel in my Dungeons and Dragons games. Because if you're even passingly familiar with 5th edition, you realize that there are no real travel rules. The tactically minded 4th edition was really no different in that matter. However, I think you need to understand the basics of what hex map travel was like in earlier editions and see why people might have moved away from that as not part of their basic dungeon experience. It's important for me to explain the basic idea of how an old school adventure, including a hex crawl, went. And it went something like this. You start off in a town, basically a tavern, and you learn of a dungeon somewhere off in the wilderness. You travel across the wilderness in a hex map until you reach the dungeon. You go into the dungeon and fight monsters and get treasure. You then haul back that treasure back to the town and spend it, and in doing so, you get XP and you level up. And that is the basic idea of the dungeon crawl. You can see a bit of the weakness in the dungeon crawl formula, at least as it goes to overland travel. Mainly that it is sort of a filler part of the adventure between the town and the dungeon, as the rules for the overland travel experience was a adventure game called Outdoor Survival by Avalon Hill. And you can probably guess, as this was a actually separate game tacked on to the original rules of Dungeons and Dragons, it was a bit clunky as it was not treated as a part of Dungeons and Dragons, and it definitely was not a fantasy game. So, as the game progressed through second and third and fourth and fifth edition, the ideas of hex crawling slowly withered away and died off for the most part. In recent years, there's a movement called the OSR, and the Land of Eem is a game that is very loosely an OSR game. In fact, many parts it wouldn't be considered OSR at all. But I think one important thing you have to realize about the movement is that with games like The Land of Eem and in other areas of old school type RPG design like Shadow Dark, is that not only are the games as a not only a recreation of old rules, but a way to have the old style of gameplay created through new and improved rules. And what I want to talk about is how the Land of Eem does this better than even old school Dungeons and Dragons. The, this game, The Land of Eem, does this in the most ingenious way by enticing the players through one of the two things that all players of RPGs truly want, and those things being XP and cool loot. How the Land of Eem handles this cool loot and treasure with overland travel is handled in two ways. Now, the first way that I found really interesting is how this game handles rations and foraging. Mainly, that a way to buy not only basic rations, but better rations. And I found this way something very interesting as this allows you to upgrade your traveling experience in a way, as well as having a way of codifying rules for the benefits of having steeds or vehicles for travel in this game. This is important to have a way to engage players in the overland travel by having a way for them to improve their overland travel experience without having something like teleportation that completely obviates the overland travel experience for this RPG, giving the players a sense of progression. Just like in most RPGs, a sense of progression allows you to combat better or engage in combat better as you gain in levels and get better fighting equipment. The other way that the Land of Eem engages the characters in overland travel is the crafting system. In most RPGs, you get the cool magic item stuff in the bottom of a dungeon, being that the dungeon is where you want to go and the overland travel is just a obstacle or speed bump to getting to the real adventure. Whereas in the Land of Eem, most of the magical items that you can acquire, you can actually craft yourself, but by getting recipes that are found in the core rule book that require you to gather materials from the various areas in the Land of Eem mucklands. Being that you can actually gain power from getting better and more magical items by actually engaging with the outdoors area of the game, thus making it an important part of the game rather than a simple speed bump to be gotten rid of or obviated through a simplified version of travel. However, this is only one aspect of the Land of Eem RPG, but I found it was a very important one that I felt was definitely worth making a video about. And I'll give you a full version of the Land of Eem RPG review coming up soon. Thank you, and I hope you found this video slightly educational and somewhat entertaining, and I hope you've had a good rest of your day.